Recording. So hello. How are you?
I'm all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of. I don't know. I mean, the whole COVID thing's a bit of a drag, but I guess I'm doing okay.
Yes. So you want to do like a quick intro for yourself?
Intro. Well, I guess when I was well, I don't know where to start. I was born in Ireland.
Okay.
I when I was in college, I did maths, chemistry, and physics, and then physics when I was in the last 2 years.
Uh,
Then I did a PhD in nuclear fusion for 6 years. Then I worked in Canada being the spectroscopy guy on the world's largest plasma cannon for 3 years. Then
what?
yeah.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's not many plasma cannons out there. It's but it was the biggest one they built in Vancouver. Yeah.
That's
Then
crazy.
it was civilian stuff. It was to generate electricity, non fossil fuel electricity.
Oh
Then
wow.
yeah. Then I wrote a book. Then I started writing. I became an author instead, and I wrote a book on philosophy. That took me a long time. It took me about a year to get the first draft. And then I wrote a second draft and a third draft. Originally I started out with the main drive of the book was ethics, and then I kind of and also I got into the political stuff. I mean, the big question I was asking is when is like war and revolution justified as well? So
Wow.
I think that's a hard question. I mean, a lot of ethics is easy. Don't kill people, don't kind of steal, don't. Those are kind of the easy questions. I think they've been resolved back in the days of Jesus and Socrates,
Yeah. Yeah.
the hard question is the really difficult question is kind of, for example, if a government wins war, okay, or it's easier to say how people should treat each other. It's a lot harder to say what to do when one guy or one country does the wrong thing. How do you respond? Do you kind of just say, "Oh, okay, we'll just leave it," or do you kind of punish, because punishment itself is evil in
Right.
isolation? So that's one thing I was at, and then in the later editions, I managed to expand my view of ethics to economics, because really
Okay.
that's what economics is about. It's about it's about claims on resources. So there's a certain amount of resources in the world,
Yes.
and then the question is, how should we distribute the claims over the good stuff in the world? I mean, I guess there's like labor and natural value, and then how do you distribute the claims to labor and natural value throughout the population? That's the real question about economics. And there's two elements. There's really two competing elements to that.
Okay.
One is producing wealth, and the other is one is producing the most wealth in order to maximize the amount of goodness that's out there for everyone. That's about incentivizing people to be productive. And then the second thing is distribute the wealth so that you don't leave anyone out in the cold. And that's the principle of diminishing marginal returns, where if someone has nothing and then you give them a house and some food to eat, that will increase their life a lot more than if someone has a house and some food to eat,
Yeah.
and you give them a mansion or a sort of a Lamborghini or whatever. So that's what I did in the next thing. And then I wrote this little booklet called The Countryside Living Allowance. I really got into the basic income thing. I like the idea of everyone having a basic income, because when it comes to claims on wealth, it seems to me there's really three sources of a claim on wealth.
Okay.
One is your productivity. The second is that you're a human being. And the third is that you have maybe needs that are greater than anyone else, the needs that are greater than average. So to me it seems that there's really the productivity is just earning stuff. I mean I guess that productivity thing can either be in the form of the free market, or it can be the form of working for the in the public sector. The second is universal basic income, and then the third would be some kind of disability benefit. This might be a bit controversial, but I was thinking about pensions, and actually, when you think about a pension, you can the fact that the thing is that getting old is something that everyone can predict. So maybe we should have mandatory savings when you're young rather than a pension when you're older. I've thought about that as well. I haven't actually put that in my philosophy though. Yeah.
So like,
what happened after that? Yeah. What's that?
Mandatory savings. That's sort of what like they are doing now, isn't it?
What I was thinking about was, oh yes, I'll tell you this thing called, was it The Law of Wages by Henry George.
Sure.
Progress on Poverty is a really interesting book, but his thing in The Law of Wages is what he was thinking about, what actually determines the level of wages, like the baseline level of wages, the sort of the minimum wage type thing. And what he said is, under conditions of freedom will be the terms at which one man will choose to work for another. And then he said, clearly it will be fixed by what the men can make if working for themselves. If the wage was any a wage that was any, if the wage was higher than this, no one would, a wage can't get higher than this because employers wouldn't have to offer any more than that, because the competition between workers would ensure that the wage would remain lower. But if the wage was lower than that, no one would work, because they could just work for other people because they could make more by working for themselves.
Right.
So what he says is, like, the baseline wage is actually set by what you can make as a homesteader. And that was the basis of my little booklet called The Countryside Living Allowance. The idea that if you can actually give people just a little bit of capital to start their own homestead, it would actually quite a modest basic income combined with a low interest rate would enable people to front load a lot of that basic income to set up a homestead if they wanted to, and just live off the land. But the thing is that not everyone would have to do it, because because basically price is set by supply and demand. So if you reduce the supply of labor, you push up the price of labor. So if you just give people an option to survive in a way that doesn't require them to sell the labor to others, you're going to push up the price of labor until it equals the value that people can create kind of living on a homestead. I don't actually believe in having a very big basic income, but a little bit of a basic income can make a huge difference, I think, to society and wages and all that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting concept. It's very what would I say? That some politicians are even beginning to be proponents of this idea of UBI. Certainly going more into mainstream.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it seems to me the thing is a lot of work that happens today is zero sum. So I mean,
how would you describe that?
Well, people kind of, well, for example, there's this view that you have to work really, that if in order to make a lot of money, you have to work really hard. But the thing is, just because you're working really hard doesn't mean you're actually producing value for society. For example, if you think about back in the medieval period, soldiers had to work really hard, and take on a lot of risk in order to kind of, produce value for their general or that kind of stuff. But while they're producing value for the general, they're destroying value for all the people they kind of rape and pillage.
Yes.
So it's a lot of effort to be a soldier, but it doesn't actually produce any value. And I think in the same way, people in finance, accountants, advertisers, people who are working in advertising campaigns, I mean, they obviously work very hard. But at the same time, if the goal of an advertising campaign is to sell your brand of soap rather than a competitor's brand of soap, then you people are like throwing a huge amount of effort into you got these two soap brands that are all hiring advertising executives, and they're putting a load of effort into trying to sell their brand rather than the other. But it doesn't actually matter in the big picture whose brand people buy, except to the soap companies themselves. So they're not really creating wealth. It's just a competitive struggle, and people are putting a huge amount of effort into it, but the effort isn't actually producing much value. And you could think of the same thing with lawyers. You know, the lawyer, the prosecutor, all that. Those they put a lot of effort. They do work hard. People who work in law, but at the end of the day, you've got two parties who are sort of, and you got a judge and all that, and it's a competitive process where you've got, you know, two disputants, and one's going to win, one's going to lose, and the person who hires the best lawyers wins, and a lot of effort goes into it, but you're not really creating value in the process. And I think there's a lot of work that goes on at the moment that doesn't actually produce value for society. I mean, that's one of the things that the COVID crisis has actually taught us. I actually thought that when the COVID thing, when the lockdowns hit and all that kind of stuff, I actually thought that we were going to get into some kind of a 28 days later scenario where in 3 months' time you just walk out and everything was abandoned and the shops aren't running and the electricity's down and the water's down and just like crazy hordes of people are running for kind of food and attacking you and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, there was some pretty, like, for a few weeks there were some scary scenes in supermarkets, but actually it was really amazing. I found just how things did keep ticking along when very, very few people were working.
Yes. I'm still half expecting at some stage for the economy to collapse or something, because I can't understand how it keeps going without most people are not working.
Well, the thing is that it's automation. The thing is, this is actually a big issue that's happening right now with youth unemployment, because when it's going to be a long time until we make everything into robots. So it's going to be a long time before nobody has to work at all. But the thing is, when the question is, when someone retires from a company, will that person be replaced by a new hire, or will that person be replaced by increased productivity? So it's not even that you're exactly replacing one job. You know, it's not even that you're like someone's going away and an android comes in or anything like that. It's just that if you have an existing workforce with better tools and better processes, and just, you know, automate the odd task here and there, a smaller team can achieve more. And that's been going on for a very long time, just increased productivity. And that's a great thing, because when you think about how when you think about the arrow of progress, the whole idea of technological progress is that we develop this technology that allows us to get all these benefits, without while requiring less effort. That's the whole goal of really technological progress, is to alleviate the effort required to get the things we need. But the end result of that is that no one's going to need to work eventually. Maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. What seems to have happened in reality over the past few decades is that we've replaced, as less and less people need to do essential jobs, we've created all these non-essential jobs. Society's become more bureaucratic, and just there's more advertising, more bureaucracy, like things like accountants, lawyers, tax laws have become more complicated. So you need to hire an accountant to fill in the tax. And why are the tax laws complicated in the first place? You know, and we just filled these sort of, as technology has triumphed in some ways and made less and less people required to do useful jobs. We just kind of created all these kind of useless jobs to replace them. And with the COVID thing, we've kind of, I guess, we've realized that actually just a relatively tiny fraction of the population doing these like useful things is enough for everyone else to just sort of sit back and twiddle their thumbs at home.
It definitely seems that there's a lot of things that we're doing that there's no need for them. And it's almost like because there's no UBI or anything like that. You need to have people working, but there's nothing for them to do. So
But you can
just
always
give
make
them.
things for people to do. You can always
Yeah,
tell people lift up a rock here, put it there, kind of like
yeah.
Sisyphus. And that's kind of what we've been doing, and we've been doing it in sort of competitive ways, but it's not really fun. That we created these rather annoying sort of jobs that aren't really that necessary.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I think if we could get to a stage where we measure things by the value they create, then that would that measure would make a lot of things to change.
Then the question is, you have the deep philosophical question of what is value.
Oh yes, yes, it is. Do you have an answer for that?
I don't think there's any such thing as objective value. I think
Uh,
well, but basically people want what they want. That's the basis of my philosophy. It's just
okay.
people want what they want. That seems like a really obvious statement.
Uh,
And like a lot of times when I say something that's self-evident, people are like, oh, that's self-evident. But
uh,
I think and as if like a self-evident statement doesn't produce any new information. But I would go as far as to say that a self-evident statement negates a self-contradictory statement. And so if
okay.
you believe that human beings do not simultaneously hold self-contradictory beliefs, then self-evident statements have no value. But
Uh,
personally speaking, I think people hold a lot of self-contradictory beliefs, and often self-evident statements can be useful to kind of bring out implicit self-contradictory views that we have, that we kind of maybe haven't really thought about, haven't even articulated, but when we actually think about it, we think our existing views are a little self-contradictory, and sometimes self-evident statements can kind of bring those out. So
yeah.
I think kind of, yeah,
I think they also work great for like a bedrock to start finding things on top.
yeah. I go as far as to say that I wrote an interesting article
Right?
about why the laws of the universe, laws of physics, are the way they are, which
Really?
I kind of, yeah, I think you might find that interesting.
Okay.
Um, you'd be surprised about like things like conservation of energy.
Yes.
All the conservation of energy really means is that is the laws of physics don't change with time.
Sorry, can you say that
The
again?
only thing when we say that energy is conserved in the universe,
Yes.
the only thing we're really saying is that
Uh-huh.
the laws of physics are constant with time.
Ah,
And the reason for that is that that if like the thing is, whenever let's say you have all these energies that you know about,
yes.
and like chemical energy, sound energy, light energy, that kind of stuff, and you say, okay, this is all the energy out there, and then and energy is conserved, and then you find an
Uh-huh.
example where energy is not conserved. Um, Provided that process is repeatable, you can always say, instead of saying we've proved the law of conservation of energy is wrong, you
Yeah.
can always say instead we found a new source of energy. You can, as long as the laws of physics are repeatable and things stay constant with time, you can
Uh-huh.
always then the law of conservation of energy is actually not falsifiable. The only thing that falsifies the law of conservation of energy is if the laws of physics vary as time goes by.
Huh. Do you think like that could happen if given enough time?
Though this is what I was writing about in
Uh,
my article, why the laws of the universe are the way they are.
yeah.
And what I said is that the laws of physics, I invoke the anthropic principle in the sense
Uh-huh.
that evolution couldn't take place if the laws of physics varied. So we're made of atoms,
Right.
and we're this complicated soup of interacting atoms, and the way the atoms in our body interact is absolutely crucial to the life processes involved, the biological life processes that involved.
Yeah.
It's a very delicate balance, and if any of the laws of physics actually changed in a dramatic way, then the atoms would interact in a dramatically different way, and all life would die very quickly. Um,
Uh,
so, so the thing is that living organisms need the laws of physics to stay constant in
uh,
order to exist. So the mere fact that we exist, we could only exist in a universe where the laws of physics were constant with time.
right.
That
Right.
that that that's what I that's my kind of argument for why the laws of physics are the way they are. Well, that's one of the arguments, and I made loads of other arguments.
Yeah,
but it actually comes from a self-evident statement. Although the interesting implication of that is that logic only applies if there's like an infinite number of universes with an infinite number of different laws, and it's just where we are. Where we are as one tiny little universe among a huge multiverse, but it's just that life can only exist in local universes where the laws of physics are constant. There may be other multi-universes all over the place where laws of physics change all over the place, but you can't get any living organisms there.
Right, because things would change before.
It's like if you were like it's as if you were building a skyscraper and you were constantly blowing up the bottom floor.
Right. Yes. You wouldn't get very far.
Yeah. You couldn't develop complexity because every time something complex exists, the very foundations on which it requires to kind of run change.
Right. So do you believe in the multiverse theory?
It's one of those things. I think since I wrote the article, I do. Maybe I just I don't know. Maybe it's a bias on my part. I quite often when I come up with an idea, I change my views to fit the idea.
that happens. It's true. Yeah, I think there's something rather. I don't know if the word is beautiful, but there's something very like that creates awe, about thinking that there's this infinite number of things happening.
Yeah. I mean, I guess living creatures like to grow and expand. That's the nature of life, is that it reproduces and replicates. So it's good to know that the universe is very, very big, so that we can expand for quite a long time yet.
Yeah, true.
If we can explore into space, if we can get into space anyway.
Yes, that would be incredible if we can start to branch out.
Do you know something I calculated?
What?
I calculated that the potential energy of moon rock, the gravitational potential energy density of moon rock, is the same as petroleum. So
wait, what is moon rock?
So basically, right, rock on the moon.
Okay, moon rock. Okay.
So the moon is moving at 1 kilometer per second around the Earth.
Okay.
And the escape velocity of the moon is 2 kilometers per second. And the escape velocity of Earth is 14 kilometers per second. So if you could build a railgun on the moon that kind of launch, or a coil gun on the moon that launched moon rock at a speed of 3 kilometers per second, you could escape that moon rock could escape the gravitational pull of the moon, and also cancel out the motion of the moon. So at that point, the moon rock is stationary above the Earth, and then it will start falling towards the Earth. And then when it falls towards the Earth, by the time it hits about the Earth's orbit, it's moving at 14 kilometers per second. So if you could then decelerate that moon rock, so it's like a baseball bat, where you're kind of where you throw with one hand and catch with another hand. So if you could put something in orbit around the Earth that could sort of catch the moon rock and decelerate it to 0 or whatever, the amount of energy it takes to launch the moon rock, I think it's about 1/10 of the energy that you would capture if the amount of energy it would take for the railgun on the moon to launch the moon rock would be about 1/10 the energy that the coil decelerator on the Earth would capture.
Wow! So that would be massive.
And when you look at the energy you'd get per kilogram of moon rock launched, you obviously wouldn't launch a big thing. You'd do it very, very small. But if you look at the weight and energy ratio of weight to energy, it's about the same as gasoline. So it's almost as if the entire moon was made of gasoline. And and gravitational potential energy. If you look at gravitational potential energy, that applies to everything. If you decelerate rock from Jupiter, you get even more potential energy as it goes down towards the sun. And this is actually what people talk about black holes. When people talk about black holes converting all of matter into energy. If you put something moving towards the black hole, by the time it gets close to the event horizon, pretty much all of its energy is kinetic rather than potential. and you can convert the entire mass of the thing. If you could decelerate it, put a decelerator close to a black hole, you could like convert almost the entire mass into energy. And to put that in perspective, a nuclear fusion reaction converts 1% of the mass of hydrogen into energy.
So we're talking 1% with nuclear fusion, and with the moon rock is.
Well, no, with the moon rocket it's much less. Moon rocket is less, but if you do a black hole, because the Earth isn't a black hole, right?
Oh,
so
yeah, right.
But if you do it with a black hole, you can get to 100%. Well, not you in practice you probably wouldn't get to 100%. Maybe you get 10%. But another interesting thing is that when you think about all the stars in the sky, their energy is just wasting away. So they're all going to go out at some time. Someday they're all going to go out. All the lights are going to go out.
Yes.
And what was I going to say? If all this, in about 5 million years' time, all the lights will go out, and that's all the energy is gone, because they're kind of just burning and burning and burning. But their mass is going to keep the mass in the universe is going to kind of keep there. So to a certain extent, the mass energy in the universe is like a battery that civilization could tap long after all the stars burn themselves out. If we get that far.
Yeah, we would have to travel a long time to get to a distant star.
Yeah. But we got a long time.
Yeah, you said in 5 billion years all the stars will go out?
Not all of them. I think it's like, certainly in 5 billion years our sun's going to go out, and a whole load of other stars are going to go out. And it's an exponential decay. There's going to be, in like 10 billion, 20 billion years, there's going to be a lot less stars burning. There's going to be much less bright stars in the sky in 20 billion years time. But there actually are going to be quite a few dim stars, like red dwarfs, that will keep kind of simmering away for 100 billion years. But even when the red dwarfs go out, gravitational potential energy and mass energy and sort of and using black holes could actually be a way for civilization to continue to produce the energy it needs to survive, if we kind of get that far.
Yes, that sounds like a science fiction, but if we get there, it will be incredible. You will get.
I am pessimistic though.
Yeah, all that energy. You can tap into that, it will solve so many problems.
I am pessimistic though, because when I looked at there was this book, there was this paper by Neil Bostrom where he talked about all the stars that will ever be formed in the entire history of the universe. And the interesting thing is our sun is a very average star in that respect. So our sun isn't actually that exceptional. That our sun is just like our sun was formed when most of the stars at around the time when most of the stars in the entire universe will ever be formed. And I think that's a bad news, because if we were the first civilization to ever exist, that would then you'd expect our sun to be actually formed before most of the long before most of the other stars in the universe were formed. Whereas if we're kind of an average, what that actually suggests is there've been many alien civilizations that have existed before us, and given that we can't see any of them around right now, that kind of suggests that they've died, or they haven't at least they haven't expanded into space. They haven't developed spacefaring capability.
A lot of people that think that civilization hits certain points where there's the risk of extinction. There's a lot of discussion of whether we're already past that point, or we're heading towards it.
I think the thing is, the issue is that technology is really power, and the problem is that as everyone becomes more powerful, and that's what technology does. It's making every single person on Earth more powerful. All the things we can do now that just wouldn't have even been imaginable, just a couple of hundred years ago. So everyone's become more powerful as a result. And I think that there's been an interesting article by was an interesting presentation by I think Sam Harris and some other guy, where they predict that just the average guy will be able to put together a biological weapon in a couple of decades time.
Oh, that would be very scary.
The thing is, like things like smallpox, the DNA of smallpox is public domain. So there's actually a lot of really deadly viruses whose DNA is public domain, and that's not a big deal because it takes a lot of effort to actually you can't just go down to the store and buy a DNA synthesizer right now. But if the cost of everything's going down and down and down, so if in 20, 30 years time it ever becomes possible to just go down to the supermarket and buy a DNA synthesizer for like 10 quid, then you have a situation where anyone can just like Google sort of download smallpox DNA blueprint, sort of like in a 3D printer, just sort of stick that into the DNA synthesizer and you got smallpox. And you could have like the way you have all these like hackathons these days with like people playing around with 3D printers and hacking, doing these hackathons and doing the little projects. You could in the future you could have communities of people who are interested in building sort of deadly bioweapons who just kind of form these little forums on the internet and sort of compare that. I found a really, really deadly thing. Oh, look, I've made a little mutation with my and if everyone can just spend a tenner and buy a DNA synthesizer and sort of like a 3D printer and just play around with disease DNA, then like
you only need one of those to escape or to go bad, or maybe like someone even do it on purpose because they're angry about something.
But even have you seen the video about the warning video about drones?
No.
Yeah, there's this kind of worst case scenario in drones where they have all these drones and they program the drone to like with a little bit of explosive and then the drone flies into someone's skull and blows up and kills them. But if you think about like a drone, for example, if you put a knife on a drone, right? Just make a little drone, put a knife on it, a little dagger, and then just program the drone to move really fast towards someone's jugular. That's if you make 1 million of those drones, that's a weapon of mass destruction, and it's a very cheap one.
I saw a video of someone on YouTube, and he put a machine gun on a drone. A drone was firing, and all my friends were laughing, and I was like, "This is so scary! Like anybody could do it. Go to a city."
The worst thing is you don't even need a machine gun. If you put a knife on a drone and the drone, if you put a knife in front of a drone and the drone moves, and you have a drone that can move fairly fast, like let's say have a drone that moves 30 miles an hour, and with a knife on it, and it's programmed to just stick the knife into someone's eye or something like that. That's a very dangerous weapon, and it would be so simple. In that case, the thing that makes it deadly is not so much the hardware as the software. It's the combination. You got some very simple hardware that's been transformed into something deadly with sophisticated software. And again, and then the Internet of Things is another big issue. The more people are all talking about, we'll link everything together. We'll link all the devices together on the internet, and then this internet will control every single device in your home, and everything, power plants, will all be connected. Well, that means that if someone hacks it, they can basically mess with every single process in civilization. And again, you're getting to this point where a very small number of people who with nefarious sort of objectives can spontaneously cause havoc for millions of people.
That's scary.
And that's what it really comes down to, that as people become that technology makes us powerful, and it makes us and that gives us the power to do all sorts of things like heal diseases, cancer, eliminate cancer maybe someday, and all that. But it also gives us the power to do bad things and just and people kind of people, there's certainly a lot of people who, you don't even need a lot of people, but you just need a few people who are vindictive and hold grudges and hate the world, and it doesn't even take many of them. And if 1/millionth of the population can kill 1 million people, you've got big problems, and that's unfortunately where we're heading. So we have this technology that could allow us to expand out into space, but then we also have this situation where I think weapons proliferation is going to be increasingly difficult. We kind of lucked out with uranium because it's just fundamentally very expensive to enrich uranium. Uranium enrichment is an expensive, difficult process, but and also you need to mine uranium and things like that. But I think there's a lot of other potential weapons of mass destruction coming down the pipeline that are going to be very, very difficult to avoid proliferating, to prevent people from proliferating that.
Yeah. I once heard a podcast from Sam Harris, and he was talking to someone who I don't remember, but they were talking about this theory, and they said, imagine like every time you invent something new, you're grabbing into a bag and you're taking a sphere, and most of the time the sphere is white, meaning it's harmless, but you only need to get one of a new technology that allows to do harm, that is easy to do, and you only need one, and things can go really, really wrong. And
I think
sorry, continue.
I think one really important thing for us to do is to distinguish between agents and tools. That a scientist can kind of can have at least a plausible argument for distancing himself from ethical responsibility when he creates a technological tool. But if a science creates, because ultimately the person who, if you create like a technological tool, a technology that's a tool, then arguably the person who uses the tool is the one who has responsibility for the terrible things the tool produces. Yes. But if you create an agent, then if you create an agent and then the agent just spontaneously does all these awful things, then you've got to say you have ethical responsibility. The creator of the agent has ethical responsibility for the actions of the agent. And there's really two agents that I can think of. One is germs, and the other is artificial intelligence. If a scientist creates artificial intelligence and then the artificial intelligence destroys the world, as a result of a research project, then you've got to say that the creator of the artificial intelligence has ethical responsibility for the damage that the artificial intelligence has wreaked. Because who else are you going to blame? And the same with a virus. If you create a virus and then that virus just spontaneously escapes and kills millions and millions of people, the creator of the virus has serious responsibility for that.
Yeah. Especially now, that people are talking about this whole lab COVID hypothesis.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see if we can find out the real people that created the virus, if it was created.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna speculate on that, but because YouTube has some policies, isn't it? But I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. But at least philosophically speaking, creating kind of an agent and creating a tool, I think, has doing research on an agent versus doing research on a tool is a very different ethical bag of is a very difficult, different ethical thing. Yes. And I think we need to at least I think we need to discern the difference between those two. Are we creating an agent, or when you think about a research thing, and that applies to artificial intelligence as much as it applies to biological agents, but yeah, those two things are dramatically different ethically than creating a tool. I mean, arguably, I don't know. I mean, obviously, nuclear bombs are pretty bad, but at least that nuclear bombs don't just like randomly run around the place blowing themselves up, that you need someone to pull the trigger.
Right. Yes, true, that's true. There's something I read recently about artificial intelligence that left me a little bit scared. Apparently, they did a study where they put two computers to speak with each other, and they were describing how the language that they were using was changing with time. But because computers work way faster than humans, it was changing way faster, and the rate of change was increasing constantly, and it reached to the point where the people had no idea what the computers were telling each other. It escaped them, and they had to shut it down because they could no longer predict what the computers were doing.
Yeah. So for, yeah, sort of that's it was as Isaac Asimov wrote these 3 laws of robotics.
Yes.
Rule number 1: a robot shall not kill or injure a human being, or through an action allow a human being to be killed or injured. Rule number 2: a robot will obey its master unless it conflicts with the first law. Rule number 3: a robot shall protect its own existence unless it conflicts with the first 2 laws. Existing artificial intelligence is nothing like that. Like the stuff, the robots that we're developing, there's no 3 laws governing them.
No, no.
These neural networks are basically a black box. You train the neural network to do something, and sometimes it surprises you. Then you say, "Oh, that's a bit surprising. Let's retrain it." And then gradually it surprises you less and less, and it kind of does more and more what it's doing. And then you just keep modifying the training process until it kind of acts most of the right way most of the time. But neural networks surprise people all the time. Even once you think of neural networks properly trained, mostly does what it's supposed to do, but every now and again it does something completely unexpected. And that's the thing about creativity. Creativity necessarily implies unpredictability.
Yes.
That's the whole. That's what it's all about. That if you create something that can solve problems, you're basically saying, I don't know how to accomplish this. Hey, robot, work it out. But if the robot can work out something that you haven't anticipated as a solution to the problem, maybe that solution will be something you don't want.
Right. Yes. And that's when we start losing control over the creation, and it can lead to results that you're not looking for.
Yeah, the agency and that's something we really have to understand, is that the history of scientific progress up until now has really been the history of developing technological tools. Whereas now when we talk about life science, but both in terms of life science, genetics, and also artificial intelligence, we're doing research on entities that can that are agents rather than tools, and that's gonna and we're gonna create entities that can act spontaneously, and do things that we didn't even anticipate them to do. And if they're powerful agents, then that's not going to be good. So when you develop a powerful tool that human beings can use, you increase the power of humanity. If you develop a powerful agent that can act independently of humanity, you're not necessarily increasing the power of humanity.
Right. Yes. Especially if that agent can certainly choose not to pursue what's best for humans.
And then there's this lock and key mechanism, this lock and key issue, that in order to when we think about what people have used technology to do in the past, at least a portion of technology has been to gain advantage over other people. If you think about guns, that has allowed the British Empire to exist. Probably Africa, America, Australia.
If you go
when you think about colonization, you're really talking about a few men in a ship, a few men getting onto a ship, sort of sailing to 1,000 miles away, and you're talking about just a couple of ships with maybe a couple of hundred men, and then they conquer foreign lands. That would have been impossible without guns. You know,
Yeah,
if a
sure.
few men came out of it, if a few men came off the ship with spears in their hands, the Aztecs would have absolutely kicked their arse.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
or you know,
No,
the
no chance.
Aztecs or the Africans or the Aborigines would have just kicked their arse. It's only the guns that allow them to. And actually, like when you think about the history of colonization, that's actually a very good example of how technology isn't always beneficial. That it can often, that if you're a European, maybe technology was the development of technology benefited you, but if you were, you know, someone being invaded by Europeans,
Yeah.
technology could wipe you
Not,
out.
not
I think the
so much.
Tasmanians went extinct, but technology helps the person who controls it. Doesn't necessarily help the person who doesn't control it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and but anyway, the history of technology is like it's like a development of tools, but also there's a lock and key system that in order that if when you want to use technology to your own advantage and to somebody else's detriment, you need a lock and key system. You need a system that you can put the key in and control the technology. You know, that can be just a question of holding a gun. But as the technology becomes more and more autonomous, it's going to be more like to do with passwords and things like that. But the interesting, so as the technology becomes more and more powerful, the battles between people will not so much be battles to do with destroying the technological system. It'll be competition to access the keys to the technological system. So you'll have these like overlords who control this like huge technology of like technological systems of robots, and there'll be a lock and key system where the overlord puts the key in, whether it's a cryptographic key or some other kind of key, password, or maybe it puts the key in and says robots obey me, and then when the robots kill the dissidents or rebels, then they can't tell the robots to stop because they don't have access to the robots' keys. But there's two parts to this as well. There's a key system for the controllers, and then there's a maintenance shaft for so that if the system sort of malfunctions, some kind of engineers can get in and kind of say, oh, it seems to be going wrong. Let's fix this. Let's fix that. And the thing is that both of those, you're going to have an arms race to access them. So, any maintenance shaft that allows engineers to get in to modify the system is also an access point for saboteurs to sabotage the system.
Right. Yeah.
And any key system that allows, the elite to, the key controllers to sort of use the system to sort of enforce their will upon others, can also potentially, if someone forges a key, that person can access the key system as well. And one of the one problem is, I think, is that as the arms race to this kind of arms race to access the sort of power system, whether it's like a huge load of automated policemen or drones carrying machine guns, there's going to be an arms race that to prevent this arms race will make the keys and maintenance shafts less and less accessible. So we'll make it more and more difficult to access the maintenance shaft to fix the thing, because we don't want saboteurs to get in, and we'll make the keys more and more difficult because we don't want anyone to be able to forge the keys. And the possibility is at some point, maybe the controllers will actually lose the keys so that nobody can access it. So you have this like power system that no human being can. The power system is originally designed to give the key holder power over the non-key holders, but at some point, the system develops so that, because the non-key holders are constantly trying to, the smart hacker non-key holders are constantly trying to forge the keys, they develop more and more layers of security to make the keys less and less accessible, and eventually it gets to the point where the guy who is supposed to be able to access the system loses one key, and then the system becomes completely inaccessible for anyone.
Wow. Yes, and then there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, like Vladimir Putin said that the person who controls AI will control the world, but I actually think that I think AI will control the world, but the question is, how easy is it to maintain an asymmetry in terms of where one party can access the AI and other parties can't, because the parties that can't are obviously going to like really want to be able to access it,
Right.
because they're not going to want to be oppressed by this huge powerful system. They're going to want to try and get the keys.
Yes. Wow. Do you believe we can get to the point where you can like make sentient AI?
We don't know what causes sentience in the first place.
Yeah, I know. That's the why I find
Maybe
the
a
questions.
mobile, maybe the mobile phone you're holding is sentient. How like, I mean, like when you think about a butterfly or even a plant, how do we actually know they're not sentient? That our way of judging sentience, the only way we really judge sentience is based on the equivalence principle. That's
Right.
really how we judge whether something is sentient or not. We say that the only person I know. Have you ever heard of philosophical zombies?
No.
The idea of a philosophical zombie is the idea that it's possible for someone to be exactly physically identical to a human being and act exactly like a human being, and even say I am sentient, but not actually be sentient.
Okay. Yeah. I get it. Yeah.
And that's and the idea, and that seems plausible to me. I don't think it's likely, but it seems plausible. But what it does reveal the kind of intuitive process that we use to judge sentience, because the only consciousness that we really know for sure is our own consciousness. You can say I'm conscious. I don't know that anyone else is conscious.
Right.
But this guy seems to be acting similar to me. He seems to be acting similar to me. He seems to be saying things in a similar way. Look, he's biochemically kind of similar. So if he's pretty much similar to me, as far as I can tell, in a wide variety of ways, and I'm conscious, I'm just going to assume that he's also conscious or she's also conscious. And basically, as we tend, when we see things that are more and more different from us, we think, well, they're kind of different from us. So, maybe I can't sort of hold that equivalence principle anymore. I mean, some people think animals are unconscious, but probably they are conscious. But like, again, sort of, is a plant conscious? I mean, certainly very different from us, but could it have a consciousness in some way? Could a mobile phone have a consciousness in some way? Because we don't actually have. There's no really systematic way of deciding what's conscious and what's not. I don't think it's scientifically tractable. It's called the hard problem of consciousness.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Computers could already be sentient.
Right. But
a laptop could be sentient if it can't communicate. If it can't communicate that it's sentient, it could still be sentient.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I always said as a joke that the computer revolution would start the day you told the computer to do something and the computer tells you no.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, computers already say no. If you let's say you want to access somebody else's account and you type in the wrong password and you don't know their password, they say no. This is the whole lock and key system. If you try to access a computer that someone else has the keys to, that computer will already say no, and that's what security is all about. But if you have an arms race to security, we may get to a point where the computer says no to everyone. And you got this incredibly important system that we're gradually developing to be less and less accessible because there's all these saboteurs trying to sort of destroy it. And eventually, kind of the people who are supposed to access it can't even access it because there's so many layers of security that someone loses something and the system becomes completely inaccessible to anyone.
Yeah, that would be horrible if we all become oppressed by a system that we lost the power to control.
And like when you talk about power asymmetry, a system with power asymmetry, there is likely to be an arms race that will actually push systems being less and less accessible for security considerations.
It makes absolute sense. Like, it sounds awful, but at the same time, it seems like very possible outcome.
Yeah. This is actually why I think morality is so important, because like competition, interpersonal competition, and conflict is really going to destroy us as we become more and more powerful. It poses more and more difficulties, and it's not easy. If it was easy to, I mean, war is really horrible. If it was easy to stop war, we'd have stopped fighting each other 10,000 years ago.
Yes.
So it's the reason why we've had wars for the last 10,000 years is because it's very, very difficult to solve these political problems. And I hope they're soluble, but if they're not soluble, as we achieve increased power, it's really to do with conflict. That's really the problem with power is that it makes conflicts more and more destructive.
Yeah, one thing that drives me crazy, like I understand it, but also drives me crazy is, you know how now a lot of countries are trying to unstabilize the countries they are in opposition.
Yeah.
So like, especially now through social media and that stuff, they're trying to breed conflict in other countries.
It is worth mentioning that this is really just the rest of the world catching up to the US. The kind of stuff that the CIA has spent, like, I think ever since the 1950s, the CIA has been messing around with all sorts of like governments of sovereign nations, and basically in the last, I don't know, 10 or 20 years, these kind of sovereign nations, which the US has been doing all these sort of surreptitious sort of propaganda psyop campaigns, they've kind of worked out the strategies the CIA employed, and they basically emulated them, and all these strategies are coming back to bite America. It's not actually new. These kind of destabilization strategies aren't new. The new thing is that they're being applied to the West. They've always been applied by the West to all these other countries, but it's relatively recent that these other countries have been applying the same sort of psyop destabilization strategies to destabilize Western countries.
Yeah, that's very good to keep in mind. What drives me crazy is that people are breeding conflict, and it's like they're not seeing how that affects them as well. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think the big issue is that as people can kind of affect each other more and more subtly, and the more integrated the world becomes, the more subtly we can affect each other, and when we can affect each other subtly, it becomes possible to fuck around with other people's systems without quite getting the blame. Like that, people sort of say, oh, you know, there's this massive cyber attack, and we suspect it might be from Chinese people, that China or from Russia, but we don't really know, and we don't know if it's sponsored by the government or whether it's sort of hackers sort of operating independently of the government, and that kind of uncertainty allows people to be a lot more subtle. Although, frankly, the CIA did that for a long time as well. That they did all these like subtle little psyops to kind of undermine these other kind of small countries all over the world, and say, oh yeah, we didn't do it.
Yeah, of course. And the English used to pay the pirates to attack people, and they were like, it's not us, it's the pirates.
So I guess it's not really that new. It's just these problems have been with us for a very long time, and I guess it's just somewhat frustrating that we don't seem to be able to we don't really seem to be doing as good a job of dealing with conflict as we have been doing in other aspects of society, like curing diseases or producing food or building better houses.
I think too that creating conflict in other country now is so much easier to do and cheaper, and like everybody's doing it to each other, but I don't understand how they can't see that creating more conflict in the world is not good for you because you exist in the world.
Yeah, but the problem is it's the prisoner's dilemma, isn't it? That if the whole thing is that countries want to show other countries that if you mess around with us, there's going to be consequences. There's two things countries do. One, they want to show other countries, if you mess around with us, there's going to be consequences. And the other thing is they want to influence countries.
Yeah.
So kind of if so you have these diplomatic negotiations, and then kind of and you want to incentivize the party you're negotiating with to play ball and agree to your terms. So you kind of find these little kind of hooks to kind of pressurize them into it, and actually where the boundary between fair play and foul play is kind of uncertain. Like maybe you say, well, we won't give you this trade, and maybe like one party says, well, if you don't agree to these terms, we don't like those terms. How dare you shut off our trade? And then maybe we'll kind of mess around. Maybe in exchange for shutting off your trade, we'll do something deliberate, like putting just a little cyber attack to mess around with this one little thing, and then it sort of spirals from there. You can get these sort of, I guess, civic disputes can sort of gradually spiral into military disputes if one party believes that the kind of the I guess the civil means of sort of pushing, nudging the person to agree to certain diplomatic terms is uncalled for, and sort of negates and justifies just a little bit of foul play, and then that the one party does a little bit worse, and it can spiral out. Simple disputes can spiral into conflict, unfortunately.
Yeah. And now with all the weapons and everything, a conflict will be very scary for everyone.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons I believe in universal basic income is really just as time goes by. This is another big issue with automation. As time goes by, we will rely on each other less. So it'll be so like, I suppose one, like, for example, if you think about Karl Marx's whole justification for redistributing stuff to the workers was that the workers produce all the value, and these evil capitalists are sort of just sitting around sort of extracting all this value that the workers have produced, and the workers are the true producers of value. But the interesting thing is, as automation progresses, that argument to justify why the workers should get resources is going to disappear. Just as we were, the idea that I help you because you help me, this sort of reciprocity, that you've given me a good turn, I'll give you a good turn back. As automation, as machines provide services for us better than we can provide services for ourselves, that whole argument of reciprocity is going to go away. That humans are being nice to me, so I'm going to be nice to humans. Other people are being nice to me, so I'm going to be nice to other people. That's going to go away, and the idea of people helping each other is kind of going to go away, and it's going to be replaced by a non-aggression pact, where where there's like this automated trough of goodies just being produced by machines, and no human being is involved. And then the question is, why shouldn't one person take all the trough and sort of elbow everyone else out of the way? And so the new social contract, as things get more automated, is, I'll take my fair share, and I won't out of the automated trough of goodies, and I'll take my fair share of the automated trough, and in exchange I will, and you can take your fair share, and if you don't try to get more than your fair share, I won't try to get more than my fair share. And it seems to me that universal basic income is really fundamental to that sort of social contract, in terms of like, what's the fair share that someone should get of the goodies that our wonderful system of progress produces? What's the fair share that people should get just for existing? Because just as time goes by, we won't be really we'll be doing less and less, potentially, unless we just create more and more useless bureaucracy and make work jobs. But all that'll do is it'll just create a sort of a professional elite who does all these jobs that are completely useless, but they kind of justify it in their own mind because they say they're really useful, and I deserve my salary because I'm doing a really useful service to mankind, when they're not. They're just puzzling around papers, and then a whole load of other people will just be potentially completely excluded from the system. So I think universal basic income is really, really important for that.
Yeah, Yeah, it seems like it will be very hard without something like UBI or something. Because like it's true that there's less jobs that we need people to do every year. There's less and less and less.
And the young people are going to get the brunt of that.
Uh,
This is the thing that long before automation sort of kicks everyone else out of the workforce, it will be increasingly possible to replace old retiring workers with productivity rather than young workers. And
uh,
at that point, what you're going to see is you're going to see, maybe unemployment will creep up from 5% to 10% to 15%. But while unemployment is 15%, you'll have a situation where youth unemployment is like 80% or 90%.
right.
So basically, there's a whole load of people who are just slowly being phased out with productivity, and then the young people who are coming out of college with these huge college debts, they're not going to be able to get any jobs at all.
Yes. Yes, that's true. That's true. It's getting so expensive. And also at the same time, we're all living longer and people are working until a later stage.
That's fine. That's a great thing. In many ways,
Yeah.
that's a great thing. But the problem is, of course, that the way things seem to be working out right now is that sort of the people who are living longer and the older generation are they're kind of hodling all the resources to themselves, and they're not
Yeah.
sharing it with the new entrants. And of course, the reason they're not sharing it with the new entrants is because of this. Is because of our culture of reciprocity. The idea that, well, if these new young whippersnappers want to share the pie, they gotta do something for me. I'm not going to give them something if they don't do something for me first. Um,
Yeah.
and as you get more and more automation, the older generation who have claimed all these rental resources, they're buying more and more services from each other and from machines and all that kind of stuff, and they're not buying services from younger people. And I mean, a lot of younger people, they want jobs. They want to. I don't think they particularly want to revolt. They just want jobs with a decent
Yeah.
wage and a decent pay, but they're finding less and less opportunity to do that because machines are replacing it, and it's ultimately the young people leaving college and entering the workforce, or not entering the workforce, as the case may be. They're going to be the principal victims of automation. I mean, at this stage, it's not quite at crisis level. I think most people do kind of get some kind of jobs, although they seem to be more precarious.
Uh,
And precarious, these things like 0-hour jobs. A big issue with the 0-hour job is the effect on your credit rating. That
so
if you
what's a 0 hour job?
well, these like 0-hour contracts where you don't have a stable job. You kind of
Uh,
you list with a company, and then the company say, well, you're a contractor with us, and we'll
right.
find these little gigs for you. And every now and again someone says, oh, we got a job for you, go off.
Yeah.
And then there's like ages where you're not. So your weekly income's fluctuating all over the place.
Uh,
And a big problem with that is that it leads to a much lower credit rating. So we have a situation where people with the wealthy people who already, there's two ways to get low interest loans from a bank. One way is to have assets that you can secure the loan against,
uh,
and the other way is to have a really, really solid salary. So if the bank knows that you're going to get paid week after week after week after week after week reliably, they'll be okay. I think I can trust you to. I think there's a
uh,
very low risk you'll default, and they'll give you a low interest loan. Similarly, if you have loads and loads of assets, and like if the loan goes bad, you can always just sell your assets and use the assets to pay back the loan. That also enables banks to say, okay, I think the risk of default is very low, so we'll give you a low interest loan. But if you have a salary that's like oscillating all over the place,
yeah.
you won't. The bank will not give you a low interest loan. So this is the thing: if people with precarious work will find it very, very difficult to ever take out a mortgage. So they won't be able to buy houses; they'll be renting, and even if their income is similar to the income of someone who's got a secure income, the credit value of the precarious income is much, much lower. So it means that the new entrants. So if the new jobs are all these kind of precarious sort of 0 hours contracts and things like that, then those people will never really be able to get a mortgage for a house. They'll be spending their entire life renting.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big issue, because I think the new that you have all these, like, the older generation still has these fairly stable jobs. And yeah, sure, we're not getting complete unemployment in the younger generation yet. As automation progresses, that's going to increase, and the situation is going to get worse. But we're still in a situation where a lot of people are leaving college. They've got their debts on the college debts on the one hand. They don't have any house on the other hand. The college debts are, and the college debts are also going to make it much more difficult to get a good credit rating, because you're coming out with a whole load of debt already, and the bank's saying, "Do I want to give you more debt?" So they've got college debts, which are going to sort of damage their credit rating, and then the jobs they're likely to get are likely to be much less secure, which is also going to damage their credit rating, which means that many of these people will never be able to get a mortgage for a house. And that's a big reason why I'm a big fan of UBI, because means that in the same way that precarious sort of income for work has a lower credit value, precarious benefits also have a lower credit value. So if you have your means tested benefits, where maybe you qualify for 1 week, and then maybe they say, "Oh, sorry, we've changed the terms, so yeah, you're not going to get your benefits anymore," or maybe it's like, "Well, okay, the terms are the same, but your life circumstances have changed, so this benefit program has expired." So if you have benefits that turn on and off and on and off and on and off, that produces much less credit value than a universal basic income. So if you have a really reliable income, then the bank will say, "Okay, I see your basic income is, you got this basic income, it's reliable. I can trust that you're going to make the payment." Whereas if you say, "I'm on this welfare program that might cut off, next week," the bank's not going to give you a loan or a mortgage. So that's another big issue with universal basic income, is it's the highest of all the ways you can pay out an income to people. It's the income with the highest credit value.
Yes, I everything I've heard about UBI, I like, but I'm like, have you heard any convincing argument against it?
I mean, there's arguments against going nuts with it. I think that,
Right.
I mean, what people there's people say that UBI will discourage work.
Yes,
I think I don't think that's UBI. I think it's income tax funded UBI. This is the interesting thing that I find is, I find a lot of capitalists actually implicitly believe in the labor theory of value proposed by Karl Marx. Basically, Karl Marx believed that everything that it has value, that value ultimately comes from labor, and that's not true. Value comes from supply and demand. Whenever people want something to a greater extent than it's supplied, then there's a price. Price is the result of competition for resources in a civilized society. So when if at zero price, people would want more of something that's around than what it exists, then you won't get zero price. Because at some point you have to push up the price to reduce demand, and then in addition to that, pushing up the price can also sometimes increase supply. But there's stuff that's just lying around that hasn't been produced by anyone that people want. If you think about lakeside property, let's think about two coal reserves, right?
Yeah.
So you got one coal reserve that's really close to the surface, and one coal reserve that's deeper down. And one guy buys the mineral rights for the coal reserve that's close to the surface. Another guy buys the mineral rights to the coal reserve that's deeper down.
Yes.
The person who mines the coal that's deeper down is going to have to spend a lot more money. It's going to take a lot more labor to produce that coal than it is the coal seam that's close to the surface. So where did the extra value come from? It's not labor. It's not that a given amount of labor produces a given amount of value. There's an aspect of the value is just the fact that the coal was lying close to the surface, so it just costs less for it to do that, and that's why the mineral rights to a coal seam that would be close to the surface would be more expensive than the mineral rights to a coal seam that was deeper down and costed more to extract. And that's the case with a lot of resources, whether it's lumber, coal, anything. But there's a lot of stuff that's just, and even if you think about a managed forest, or people obviously plant trees, people plant crops, but even though you plant trees and you plant crops, some parts of the earth get more rainwater than others. Some parts of the earth have more soil, have better quality soil. Some parts of the earth require more fertilizer. Maybe you need to sort of access groundwater, and that's going to cost money. So there's all this value that's sort of just lying around that nobody produced, and I think this value that nobody produced is really, if nobody produced it, it seems like every human being has an equal right to it. And I think that's really what basic income should be. It should be a way of achieving land reform. If you look back through history, I think in general, whenever you've had highly skewed ownership of land, people have suffered. The majority of people have suffered, and when a small number of people own all the land, and whenever you've had land reform, the result has been increasing prosperity. The problem with land reform is that circumstances change. So you can have a situation where you do this land reform and you give all the peasants their little plot of land, but then which land is more valuable than another one? Maybe you give bigger plots of low value land and smaller plots of high value land. But then what if the weather changes and suddenly the guy who's got the low value land has a large plot, but it actually suddenly improves? Maybe it's because of his effort, or maybe it's because of things beyond his control. What if some people have more children than others? So land reform, so land reform may initially create a fair distribution of land, but ultimately, as time goes by, the equality gradually kind of moves away. Right. And but the way to do it in perpetuity, to have land reform in perpetuity, is the combination of a land value tax and the universal basic income. If you collect land value tax and then redistribute that out as universal basic income, then that gives everyone the right to an equal value of land. So everyone can pay the land value tax, use their basic income to pay land value tax for an identical plot of land of identical value. So your tax and your income are cancelled out if you have your fair share of land, or if you prefer, you can get less than your fair share of land and bag the difference and get a little bit of extra income to do it. Or alternatively, you can have more than your fair share of land and essentially rent it out from the rest of society by funding their basic income. And like that's, I think the Georgist interpretation of basic income is the way to do it. The idea that people wouldn't work if we pay universal basic income, it's not universal basic income that will stop people from working. It's income tax. So if you run out of these natural resources really only account for about 15% of GDP. So yeah, you wouldn't fund a very big universal basic income from that, but actually about 70% of GDP comes from wages, and maybe 15% of GDP is from capital that arises from labor. But yeah, if you go too nuts and you start sort of charging high income tax, if you charge everyone like 70% income tax and use that to fund a universal basic income, then people just aren't going to work, and that could cause a disaster. And then newly printed money is another big issue. If you just take huge loans and use that newly printed money to fund a UBI, you'll also run into trouble. So I think really, I mean, UBI policy, if it's done wrong, obviously you can mess it up a lot. You really can't make the basic income too high. You have to you really have to have a careful, well thought out philosophy to decide what the level of basic income should be. And ultimately, I found that the philosophy of Henry George gives the best answer, and that's really important, because when you say universal basic income, the next question is how much. And
Yes.
that's a very difficult question to answer. Like, how
Yeah,
much?
yeah, of course.
Okay, great, we'll pay everyone universal basic. Well, how much should we pay them? You know, and Henry George gives a really good philosophical answer as to how much we should pay them, and I think that's really what we should be. We really need to come up with a careful framework, carefully thought out framework, to kind of decide the right level of universal basic income. You can mess it up if you pay people too much. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, especially like a lot of people, I think, if they had nothing to do, will become very lost.
It's worth pointing out that our existing benefit system is much worse than universal basic income in this respect. That the existing benefits pay you to do nothing.
Yes.
That once you get a job, they take away your benefits.
Yes.
Universal basic income, on the other hand, you can get a job and also get your universal basic income. So actually, UBI encourages people to work more than the existing benefit system. Maybe you could argue that if we lived in some kind of a Ayn Rand style and narco-capitalist sort of world where if you basically don't have a job, you starve and everyone just walks by you and you literally die on the street, you could say that maybe that would give you a lot of incentive to get any job you possibly could.
Yeah.
But that's not the world we live in right now. We live in a world with welfare, where there already is welfare benefits, and they tend to be means tested. And those welfare benefits discourage people from working far more than universal basic income. Universal basic income doesn't pay people to do nothing; pays people to do unconditionally. And there's a difference, because if you get paid unconditionally, you can do something and also get the income on top.
Yes. I always thought of it like almost like if you were a shareholder of your country by being in it. If you start it that way, and it's almost like dividends that the country is paying its shareholders. I
Yeah.
know the guy that was running for in the United States for universal basic income, he had to change the
Yang.
Yeah, Yang changed the.
He follows me on Twitter now.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh, that's cool. Wow. I noticed that he changed from UBI to, I think, calling the freedom dividend or something.
Yeah.
Because he found out that it was easier to explain to people in those terms.
I like the idea of one of the things that Thomas Piketty said is that there's economies of scale when it comes to investment. So Thomas Piketty, was it that the idea is that wealthy people can afford to hire the best fund managers, because if you're a really good fund manager, you're going to be in big demand. All these investors are going to want you to be managing their sort of cash. So wealthy people hire the best fund managers, and then those fund managers access, like, there's all these laws. Have you ever heard of an accredited investor?
I think that those are the people that have a large amount of money. Yeah.
Yes. If you start a new company, if you're like just a random entrepreneur who starts a new company, you can only really ask accredited investors to invest in that company. That in order to sort of float that on the stock market to be accessible to loads and loads of different investors, you need to go through all this paperwork, and if there's like 3 of you in a garage, you're not going to be able to do that.
Right.
So what this does is it means that wealthy people have access to companies when they're very, very small, tiny, whereas because they're accredited investors, and you have to be a high net worth individual to be an accredited investor, whereas the average person doesn't have access to tiny little companies. And of course, the tiny companies are the ones with the explosive growth potential. So by the time they've done their IPO, they've already grown to be like huge. So by the time you got an IPO, that the added profits are much, much smaller. Like the wealthy individuals have been like investing in things like Airbnb when they're like this big, and then when you get the IPO, like that's when everyone else can buy it, and maybe it grows a little bit more, but it's not gonna explode in the same way.
Yeah.
So there's already laws that allow that allow people already wealthy to have opportunities to invest in the best investments and also the worst investments, to be fair, because a lot of people who start their garage things go bust.
Yeah.
But these laws actually forbid smaller individuals from investing in some of these potentially lucrative opportunities at the
that's
small scale.
so interesting. It's one of the things they always say, that the rich get richer.
And that's what Thomas Piketty says, that you've got that wealthy people can invest in all these hedge funds and things like that. And I think if you're small, you might not even be allowed to invest in hedge funds. And yeah, sort of so there's economies of scale. But one of the interesting things is a sovereign wealth fund. I like the idea of a sovereign wealth fund, where you literally where the state hires the best fund managers. So the state hires the best fund managers, and then the fund managers invest in the assets that have the best appreciation potential, and then the state takes that revenue and reinvests and just gives that out as a universal basic income. And the interesting thing is, of course, that the state could potentially do that very, very quickly, because they could use newly printed money to do that. Newly printed money doesn't really cause inflation unless it goes into general circulation. If it's used to purchase assets, it usually just kind of sticks into those assets. So what you do is you use newly printed. So all these profitable ventures, all these profitable ventures eventually burn money, because profit is a form of burning money. If customers are paying you more than your spending as costs, then the difference is burnt. Well, it's not burnt, it's given out to the shareholders, but often the shareholders are quite wealthy individuals and don't necessarily, they've got more money than they know what to do with, so they just put it back into the financial assets. But the thing is that if you print new money and then use newly printed money to put into use newly printed money to invest in sovereign wealth funds run by very good fund managers, and then the fund managers then sort of allocate that newly printed money to a really good team of fund managers allocate that newly printed money to buy the best sort of profitable investments, and then use the profits as a dividend. Then the money isn't coming out of nowhere. The money is actually coming from customers buying the profits. So you've got this sort of got a kind of closed loop of circulating money that funds the universal basic income without causing net inflation. Sovereign wealth funds have been quite successful. I think Norway had a sovereign wealth fund, and they're doing pretty well with their oil sovereign wealth funds. Yeah, Alaska too. Alaska actually used its sovereign wealth fund to fund a citizen's dividend of about £1,000 or £2,000.
Oh, that's cool. So we are already getting some tests on it. That's good.
Yeah. And the cool thing about it is, in terms of companies, companies is a really kind of gray area in terms of earned money versus unearned money, because obviously the entrepreneur who starts a company goes through tremendous risk, tremendous sweat and strain to build his company up. He's obviously earned the value of the company that he's built. Yeah. But then someday an entrepreneur might want to sell his company on to somebody else, and then you get this pass the parcel thing, where eventually where the first person who started the company really earns the benefit of that company. But at some point you're having basically investors trading with each other, and basically you buy a share of a company and from somebody else, and there's no money going into the actual company anymore. It's just people trading shares of the company and getting dividends, and the investors often haven't done anything but at the same time, you kind of the investors have kind of funded have enabled the entrepreneur to sell his company, which is good for the entrepreneur. So a sovereign wealth fund I think it resolves that gray area quite well, because it means that the entrepreneur is selling his company at a market price, and he's getting the benefit of his hard effort from the sales revenue, but at least a portion of the company that is purchased by the sovereign wealth fund. So then the sovereign wealth fund uses the profits from the company rather than to line their own pockets. They can redistribute that out among the people. So I think it's a good way of dealing with that kind of gray area where initially a company is really the result of hard work from the founder, and then at some point it becomes this sort of this just rent producing vehicle that the people who receive the dividends haven't really done much hard work to get them and have just kind of speculated and played around, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yes, that seems to be something that happens often, and it sounds like a good way to fix it and also make it work in a good way for the most amount of people.
I should probably mention Dan Schneider is the person who first he forwarded me a really good link to sovereign wealth funds on Twitter, so that's where I kind of got my that it kind of converted me ultimately when I kind of was reading about the sovereign wealth funds. So I think I should probably mention Dan Schneider since he kind of originally alerted me to this
Right.
way of funding universal basic income.
Yeah, that's really cool, and I think like seeing Andrew Yang running for the last presidential election, it's starting to become a more mainstream topic, and I think that's good.
Yeah. Problem is that generally speaking, what happens with UBI is that people are like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, and then what's the how much is it going to cost again? It's like,
Yeah.
So they say, yeah, it's a great idea, let's do a pilot. Oh, let's look at the pilot. Oh, that's had great results. The people we paid in the pilot, they just completely improved their lives. So how much is it going to cost us to roll out the main program? Oh,
Well, actually,
maybe we should wait a little bit longer. The problem with UBI is a big problem with UBI is that is phasing it in. It's enormously expensive.
Yeah.
You can't. It's a difficult thing to say, but it's very difficult to fund the UBI and the existing welfare system at the same time. What was it? Let's see. Malcolm Tory has suggested eliminating the tax-free allowance. What Malcolm Tory suggested as a way of phasing in UBI was eliminating the tax-free allowance and then making the UBI equal to the income tax you pay. So let's say there's a basic rate of tax, which is 20%, something like that, and a tax-free allowance of £10,000. So you don't pay any tax for the first £10,000, but you get but you pay 20% after that. What Malcolm Tory suggested was you get rid of the tax-free allowance and you pay UBI equal to the 20%, to 20% of the first £10,000. So if you're earning less than the tax-free allowance, you're quids in. If you're earning more than the tax-free allowance, you break even exactly. And then the other thing he says is that means tested benefits. The way means tested benefits are deducted if you start earning money. Yeah. So you have all these means tested benefits, and if you start earning money, that they usually take off the money you earn. So what Malcolm Tory suggested is, this basic income is calculated for the purposes of means tested benefits as well. So if you're on means tested benefits, you have to you basically announce your basic income, and then whatever those existing benefit programs do, they kind of count that basic income when they're calculating your benefit entitlement. So he reckons that would really be mostly neutral. It would have very little effect on society or on the budget. But the interesting thing about it is it probably wouldn't affect how much most people brought in. But what it would do is it would eliminate waiting times. So if you lose your job, you have to go through all this application process of benefits. And then maybe 6 weeks time, they'll back pay you sort of 6 weeks of the means tested benefits you're entitled to. If you did this, eliminating the tax-free allowance and then paying maybe a UBI equivalent to the income tax so that people who earn the tax-free allowance are quids even. Then what would happen is that basically if you lost your job, you would immediately get your basic income. The basic income would just come in, come on immediately, and then that would be less of a financial shock, rather than sort of waiting with absolutely zero money for your means tested benefits to be accepted.
Yeah. It also seems like it will be, since it will be more automatic, it will also take less people to have to run all the programs. So it would save also time, effort, everything.
Malcolm Tory also has a view on that, in that he thinks that all the people who run the programs don't want to be unemployed, so they'll actually fight against universal basic income because they don't want to lose their job.
Yeah, that may make sense too. But yeah, maybe we, in order for people to vote something like UBI in, they will do it once the unemployment starts hitting really bad numbers, perhaps. I'm not sure.
An interesting thing, I think welfare has got to be a part of progress, because the thing is that like you could hypothetically think, hypothetically speaking, you could think that as progress gets better and better, we could be like the Jetsons, where everyone works less and less and less. So that where everyone works 4 hours a day, and that's enough to keep society pumping along. The problem is that Adam Smith's whole theory was based around specialization. So Adam Smith's whole idea of progress is that people specialize into narrower and narrower tasks, and that's a big this specialization is a big source of wealth creation. So so what happens in practice is that as time goes by, education becomes more and more important, and the training to create these specialized workers becomes more and more expensive. So there's no point in training somebody if they don't produce value equivalent to the cost of the training. So you end up, so instead of everyone working 4 hours, you end up having this incredibly expensive training program for a small group of elite workers who once they come out of the training program are incredibly productive. But because the training has cost so much, you need to have them working 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, in order to kind of justify the cost of the training. So ultimately, it's not. So ultimately, it's not really, because training is a really important part of productivity in a technologically advanced society. As less and less labor is needed, you can't really have it so that everyone works less. Usually what you have it is that less and less people who are more and more highly trained work the same amount, and a whole lot of other people don't do any work at all, or just can't get jobs.
Yeah, that's true, because it's not like all the work gets divided by all the people, because the work would be more specific and more specialized.
The whole a lot productivity comes from training, and unfortunately the cost per training for an individual person is high, and that's what really makes this kind of idea of the Jetsons, of everyone working 3 hours a day, unfeasible.
Yes, I didn't thought of that. That's very true. And the cost of studying, like going to college and stuff, is getting bigger and bigger every year at a very alarming rate.
Part of it is this is a big problem. Is actually like worker mobility, because corporations don't trust workers to stay once they are trained. Corporations are very reluctant to cover the cost of training. So these days corporations want to hire fully trained people. They don't want to train apprentices. So what's happening is now, this is a really big problem. Is that work has become a speculative activity. In the olden days, having a pair of arms and a pair of legs was enough to get a job of some kind. Now we have to think, okay, when people reach sort of the age of 18, they have to think, okay, what skills does the job market demand? And then they have to put in a whole load of their money. They have to take out a huge loan, put a whole load of the money to train them up for skills that, and because the employer isn't going to pay them, isn't going to train them themselves, because they think that, oh, well, I could train you up, and then you could just leave for someone who's paying you more. So so they have to spend the money training themselves up, and if they get it wrong, and it turns out that that they got the wrong judgment, that the skills that they thought were going to be valuable in the workforce actually aren't valuable at all, then they've got this huge debt to cover, and they're not getting the income to cover the debt. And of course, with automation happening so rapidly, it's very, very difficult to see what kind of skills are going to be, that the economy is changing so quickly. It's hard enough as an adult to decide what skills are going to be demanded in the future. How can you possibly expect an 18-year-old to come out of secondary school and have a clear idea of what the economy is demanding and what they're not demanding? There's going to be so many of them who are going to get it wrong, and the ones who got it right are probably just going to get it right out of a sheer fluke anyway.
Yeah, probably. Like when I was 18, I got it very, very wrong. And even what happened to me is when I got to Australia, I had to get a student visa. And I decided to do a social media marketing course because I thought at least that's something that is going to be relevant. But the problem was that the social media landscape changes so quickly and the courses are updated so slowly that everything they were teaching me was like stuff from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It was like nothing was what was actually happening. So like
things like starting your blog and building links and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was like very like ridiculous stuff. Like I have my diploma here and it looks nice, but in reality it's worthless.
And this is the thing that apparently a lot of these colleges, they're building gyms and like there's quite a lot, there's like a whole load of 18-year-olds who are like there's a whole load of 18-year-old men who are like signing up for women's studies because there's lots of chicks in the classroom.
Yes.
And this is and this is like £10,000 a year to do a degree that's not going to generate income to get with the chicks or whatever.
Yes.
And all these people who teach courses, they don't bear any responsibility if you don't get the income. It's like buyer beware.
Yeah,
it's like you can't ask for a refund.
Yeah, true. And like most of the teachers, they it's not like they're working in the marketplace. A lot of them are just teachers, which there's nothing wrong, but maybe they don't have the experience of actually having to put the skills to tests and stuff.
Yeah, if you're, I mean, yeah, there's no actually like work experience is what employers value, but the problem is, of course, one big problem is that that once improved productivity exceeds the rate of retirement, then some employers are going to start firing their workers who are very, very highly skilled. That they'll fire highly skilled workers with decades of experience just because they don't need them anymore, because machines, because the existing workforce is so productive that they don't need them anymore. So now you've got highly skilled people with decades of experience applying for new jobs in their sector, and they'll probably get them. They'll probably get rehired. But what's that going to happen? How's that going to affect the new college graduates? If there's people ahead of them in the queue with like 2 decades of experience in industry looking for jobs, and what employer is going to hire a college graduate?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it seems like it's gonna increase the rate of the problem. It's gonna start accelerating more and more and more. Very true. Yeah, we'll certainly have some interesting times ahead.
Yeah.
Have to keep our eyes open.
was it the Chinese curse is may you live in interesting times.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I like for me, the world has changed so much since I was 18. It's almost completely different. So I think the ability to adapt is is crucial.
Yeah, I mean, when I reach like 55, I'll be like, I remember back when I was young, there
Yes.
wasn't any internet, and people are just like, what? No internet? I can't even imagine what life would be like.
I know. Yeah.
I remember when I was young, you just turn on the television and there was only 4 channels.
Yeah, there's people now that they don't know a world without internet.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And like not too far from now, there will only be people that know the world with internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. Ah,
But I think sex robots are next. Androids.
Android.
That's the next big disruption.
You
That's that.
do you think we'll get to to a stage with this artificial humans? All right.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think there's any doubt anymore.
Do you think?
There's a question about whether we'll get warp speed or not, but I don't think
Huh,
androids is one of the things that science fiction authors have predicted. That I think there's no doubt at this stage that we will get androids in the next decade or two. When we already have like
really?
very basic kind of, well, we got Amazon's Alexa, we've got these
Right.
kind of sex robot movable heads that do the basic idea, but like obviously like the sex dolls themselves are very basic, but
Uh,
you can see that there are like robots, like was it that the dog robot, like
yeah.
the less humanoid robots are incredibly advanced.
Yeah, I see
They-
those videos from
They're doing
Boston.
backflips.
Yes, it's incredible. They're
Yeah, they're dancing, they're doing backflips, like
yeah,
the actual more sort of the more it's incredible. The more, the less humanoid robots are doing it incredibly. So all you need to do really is is develop, is just put a little human sort of human looking sort of skin around the existing sort of robots that we have, and you'll have a very you'll have a almost a superhuman really.
wow.
It's not far away. This is the thing. Um, right now, we're developing all the components for a superhuman. They haven't
Uh,
been put together yet. So we have, one robot has this super eyesight that can sort of, you
yeah,
got drones with super eyesight that can sort of pick a human being from space. You've got you've got the things that can run super fast. You've got little worky robots that can sort of do things better. Do things better in terms of moving boxes and all, even in terms of cognitive stuff. You've got all these individual robots that all these individual AIs that can perform certain cognitive tasks at like incredible ability. And right now we look at any one of them and we say, well, okay, they're superhuman at this, but they're not good at that. But then you
right.
find another one that's good at that, but they're not good at this. And all the pieces in the puzzle that human beings do have been surpassed by individual components. And it's only a matter of time until they're all sewn up together to create a sort of a superhuman android, I think.
Wow, wow. So if we didn't have enough things to worry about, there's also superhumans.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose the question of whether the market demands it. Like, if you think about sex robots or something like that, um, we
Yeah,
could develop a sex robot with superhuman strength, but it might actually be, it might not be something they would do because
right.
there might be a safety hazard. Because one of the things about human beings is human beings can kill the human beings.
Hmm.
And what that means is if you develop an android that has all the effectors, the actuation capability of a human being, if you turning the android into a murderer is just one malware download away.
Yes, true, 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 true. Even if you put the three laws, of Asimov someone could hack it.
And it doesn't, that's not how neural networks work right
Yeah.
now. They're just this black box that nobody understands. We sort of train them around, we train them and train them and train them, try to get them to do the right thing, and usually they kind of do it, and then every now and again they do these completely unpredictable things, like what you said about the weird language that,
Yes, yes.
they trained all these robots together and said, oh, so they train the robots within a particular. Well, that's how neural networks work. You train a robot within an envelope of. So you train a robot with an envelope of responses within an envelope of stimuli, right? And
Yeah.
once you've trained it well within that envelope of stimuli, so long as the robot gets the same stimuli, it will respond predictably, very
Yes.
predictably. But the instant you take the robot and give it a new stimulus, you don't know how it's going to respond.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
That's how neural networks work.
Phew. Yes.
The artificial intelligence we're developing does not have Isaac Asimov's laws. We're creating these very powerful artificial intelligences that and we're training them to behave in a particular way, within a particular set of stimulus. But if you take an AI that's well trained to do, to operate within a particular environment, and you put it into a new environment, or do something unexpected that is outside of its training, that there's absolutely no way to tell how it's going to respond.
Yeah, that's why you always need some sort of kill switch or something.
Yeah, and this is and again, the problem is with the keys and the locks that
Yes.
That if people start sabotaging these AIs deliberately, we're going to make the kill switch less and less
easy to access,
easy to do. And the other thing, of course, is if the robot's programmed to do something, and it decides that someone flicking a kill switch will stop it from it being able to perform its task, it might decide to stop people from being able to flick the kill switch.
Yeah, true. Oh, wow. That's crazy. So do you think if it's good if we stop for this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of I think it might be a bit much to expect people to listen to us chatting for 6 hours.
Yes, no, but I would definitely would like to do another one sometime, because I feel like there's a lot more that we could talk about.
Yeah, I've definitely got other things to talk about. All right.
Yeah. It sounds like you have a lot of different interests, which I love. I used to study philosophy back at home, so I am very, very interested in all this stuff.
Yeah, same with me. I've never taken a course in philosophy, but I've read a lot of philosophy books.
Yeah.
Was it John Rawls, Thomas Hobbes?
Yeah.
Alistair McIntyre, Richard Rorty, Robert Rorty, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we definitely need to do another one because we didn't even talk about crypto and Torum and nothing.
Yeah.
Which is great though. I love when they just let the conversation go to wherever it's going.
Yeah, I can talk about crypto. I've got some views about crypto.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. One thing I wonder about crypto is one thing I wonder about crypto is a lot of crypto enthusiasts see crypto as a way of developing a system where nobody's in charge. But I sometimes wonder, I don't know if this is true, but I do sometimes wonder whether cryptocurrency may create a system where an algorithm rules over everyone. Because you're essentially having a system where, like, if you can, like, the way I said that money is our claim on resources.
Yes.
So if you imagine there's this, imagine a computer algorithm becomes totally accepted currency, that everyone accepts this currency that this distributed ledger system issues. you end up with a situation where a computer algorithm decides whether you get enough claims on resources to buy food and pay the rent.
Yeah, if that happens, that would not be a good outcome.
Yeah, and also another interesting thing is some crypto advocates talk about a machine-to-machine economy. So
Yes.
you're actually talking about a situation where human beings hold some of the keys to the wallets, but also like automated taxis hold keys to wallets as well. So you end up with a situation where some of the wallets aren't controlled by any human being at all, where some wallets are controlled by humans and other wallets are controlled by AI. So you have a situation where artificial intelligence can own property.
Oh, that would be something very different.
And the other thing is, yeah, these are one of the dangers of cryptocurrency. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely something we want to try and it's a precaution we want to try and design around to see like how can we kind of avoid that happening, because if you end up with artificial intelligence owning property, what if the artificial intelligence is better at trading than you are? What if the artificial intelligence ends up just earning all the money in the world and then owning all the property in the world and then doing what it wants with all the resources in the world, and then human beings become poorer and poorer and own less and less Bitcoin and whatever, and the AI ends up owning all the Bitcoin?
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, because the machine will most likely be better trader than people.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And if it and like these days, again, machines are tools for human beings. So you know that you have all these algorithms that trade that trade the funds that human beings have, and the algorithms make money for the people who own the algorithms. But what if the algorithms actually own the money that they make in profits in the and they just own it themselves, and no human being owns it? But what if the algorithmic ownership is the economic ownership of the valuable resources in society by algorithms is, I think, is quite a concern. And crypto, this is one issue. This is I would say that's a significant concern of cryptocurrency. Is it may actually create a situation where computers can be the legal owner of resources.
That concept never occurred to me, but yeah, I mean, what if that happened? That would be awful.
This is the thing that this is one disadvantage of cryptocurrencies. I mean, maybe we can design around it. But the thing about cryptocurrencies is cryptocurrencies are designed to be they're designed to be robust against governments. So the idea is that no matter what the government says, the Bitcoin wallets are still in place. Everyone thinks that everyone acknowledges that Bitcoin has value, and that the system will just keep operating whether the government's like it or not. Like the thing is with the government, at least the government can sort of pass laws that say, look, only a person can own that. But if you have a economic system that is independent of the laws, where basically governments have to get in line because that's just how things work. The people, because governments actually need money to fund their operations. So, for example, I mean, if let's say the dollar collapsed and everyone decided, the dollars don't have value, only Bitcoin has value. What if the U.S. Army decides we don't want to be paid in dollars, we want to be paid in Bitcoin? At that point, Joe Biden won't be in charge of America anymore. Max Kaiser will be in charge of America because he's got all the Bitcoin. So kind of and then you have a situation where, I mean, if you have like private security companies, weapons companies, all that kind of stuff, what if they're working for an algorithm in order to pay and then the algorithm buys weapons from them and pays them Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency?
Oh no.
I mean, I think, there's advantages. I mean, the problem is these days is that it doesn't seem like the public institutions are are doing a very good job anymore. They're not acting in a trustworthy manner.
Yeah.
So that's causing us to say, well, there seems to be a lot of corruption, and that's causing us to say maybe we should decentralize. And I think probably I mean that stuff, like just all these deplatforming of people have made me become a big in January 2020 I thought Bitcoin was a load of crap, and then kind of I totally, over the past few years I've become quite a zealot of over the past, since the recession. I was just amazed at the de-ranking and the censorship of medical information and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Really deeply
Yeah.
shocking. And I think we do need cryptocurrency, if only just to protect freedom of speech. But there are potential. I think there are potential downsides of decentralized ledger systems as well.
Yeah, I think it's good to be aware of the downsides, because sometimes people tend to be very idealistic, and they think, oh, this is going to be great, it's going to solve every problem, and
I think at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, it's about careful design. That you can probably design around these downsides, and maybe, I mean, I'd be interested to hear answers as to why my concerns aren't a concern, or how they can be kind of designed around, and how it can stop sort of algorithms from potentially just owning the entire world, and sort of out trading human beings and basically becoming an owner of all the cryptocurrency, and then human beings don't own any of the economy and algorithms own all the economy. I'd like to see arguments, an argument as to how we can stop that. That would be interesting. But or maybe it's possible to design around it, but I think it's really important to be aware of at least potential problems, so that you can like design to avoid them right from the outset.
Yeah. I think like I wish like people who design the social medias would have taken into consideration the possible downsides, because I think they didn't, and the way they're built is very hard for them to correct them. So that's a clear example of what could happen if you're not aware where the
I mentioned some of the downsides in my article on cryptocurrencies, but I also mentioned the upsides. I think I mean, this is the really difficult thing. I mean, we're either going to go towards central bank digital currency, or we're going to go towards cryptocurrency. Without a central bank digital currency, I think the private banking system is going to collapse. And if the payment system of the world collapses, then that would be absolutely catastrophic.
Yes.
But with central bank digital currency, the payment system of the world won't collapse. But then the question is, do you want a very small group of central bankers to have absolute control over your claim on resources? This is centralized versus decentralized. And probably the answer is no. But then if you go for this decentralization where nobody's in charge, we get back to the problem of, what if the algorithm's in charge? What if the AI takes, if you have an unbreakable algorithm, and the whole thing about Bitcoin is it's designed to be unstoppable, actually designed to be unstoppable. So if you have an algorithm that's designed to be unstoppable, and then sort of AI uses the algorithm to gain economic control, what do you do about it?
Yeah, because even if the AI gets like a little bit every time, eventually he's gonna end up with all of it.
Yeah, I mean, if the AI, if you have a situation where we have a global Bitcoin economy, for example, and Bitcoin, the Bitcoin maximalists are right. Bitcoin maximalists are right, and the only thing of value is Bitcoin, and you buy goods and services in Bitcoin. Well, what if AI starts selling you goods and services in exchange for Bitcoin, and then by selling more and more services of Bitcoin, let's say you're spending your Bitcoin buying services from the AI, but the AI doesn't spend Bitcoin buying services from you, so you get a trade. So the human economy generates a trade deficit to the AI economy, just because the AI is providing better services. Eventually, the AI is going to amass all the Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Do you believe that we could reach a point where Bitcoin is the global currency?
I don't know. I think one thing that I like is basic attention tokens.
The BAT, yes, from Brave.
It seems to me that actually the real that Bitcoin isn't really backed by anything that has real value. It seems to me that actually the underlying value of the internet is actually attention, and that might be a good thing, because maybe it means that that that's one thing that every human being does have. So maybe it's something that if we could have an attention-backed cryptocurrency, kind of like basic attention token or something like that. I mean, Torum is almost a kind of an attention-backed cryptocurrency. That if you imagine in the future, advertisers decide they want to sell things on Torum, and they spend XTM to sell their wares. Well, they'd be if the sales revenue from the if there's genuine sales revenue in fiat currency or gold or anything really, as a result of them spending money and spending XTM to advertise on Torum, then suddenly XTM has a very real value in the sense that it gives people access. It gives advertisers access to the markets, and that would apply for BAT. It would apply for XTM. It would apply for potentially library tokens as well. So these kind of platforms, I think that's the crypto economy that I can understand, is attention. Right. Bitcoin, I mean, maybe Bitcoin will last, but I just have this feeling that the future of cryptocurrency is going to be a currency that's based on attention. Because attention is a finite resource. We've created. I remember in the olden days when I was I don't know, like in the 1990s anyway. I'm not that old, but in the 1990s, you go to Virgin Megastore and you'd buy these video, these VHSs, and you're like, oh, great, great deal, sort of only £7 for this VHS of a movie I really want. And now we have this abundance of information that at the time, in the 1990s, it would have seemed like heaven, just having all the music at your fingertips, or movies and music, everything at your fingertips. But of course, you end up with a deficit of time. You got more content than you could ever look at in your entire life. So the question is, do you want to spend 24/7 looking at stuff on the computer, or do you want to do anything else with your life? And attention, spending attention looking at something is attention not spent on something else. So there's a real scarcity of attention, and it's also a very desirable asset because you need someone's attention to sell things. So I think that seems to be the native asset of the internet, is attention. So I think cryptocurrencies, the cryptocurrencies that will gain prominence eventually when the dust settles, will be ones that are linked to attention. And I don't think Bitcoin really has an attention. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't. I mean, maybe things are. Maybe just being the first mover will allow Bitcoin to get everything, but it doesn't look like that. If you look at the Bitcoin dominance chart, it's like kind of boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It doesn't. It does seem to be losing dominance steadily. I suppose we'll have to see how things go, but
yeah, it's certainly like the space is still like, it's been 10 years, but it still seems like it's new and it hasn't decided yet. It seems like it's quite open.
Yeah, I think all these. I think there's a whole load of utility tokens out there, but my personal view is, if it's not linked to attention, then it's something that can be replicated. It's really that you can provide that value. Providing value isn't enough. Air is valuable, but air is free, and information and processing may be valuable, but if you can replicate that information and processing, it becomes that the cost of it will go down to zero. But what I think ultimately the monopolies that can be achieved are really monopolies of community. So I think it's when the dust settles, it's going to come down mostly to engagement. I could be wrong, but that's my view.
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Even a lot of people talk about the attention economy.
Yeah. That's I've written an article about that called the persuasion economy. Yeah. That's also on my website. Maybe I'll show it to you.
Yeah. I'll put links to your website and all that stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
So people can find it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So we should definitely do another one and talk more in depth about these last topics.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. Unfortunately, here it's quite late, and I am getting a bit tired. Unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Good night then.
Yes, but thank you, man. This was incredible. It was great to see your face because I we always interact through Torum, and exchanging text is not even close to the same as talking to someone.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So thank you for taking time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me. It's good fun. I
yeah,
enjoyed that.
yeah, yeah. I really hope we can do it again.
I'm sure we can. I've got plenty
Yeah,
of time.
yeah, especially now during lockdowns.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. Thank you.
Okay. See you.
I'll see ya. Bye.